How do you throw a perfect spiral? The answer is actually very simple, but if you've never been taught the right way, it can be tough to get it right. I'm gonna give you the 5 most simple tips that by the end of this video will help you throw a perfect spiral, whether this is your first time ever picking up a football or if you're already a varsity QB. So pay attention because you're not gonna wanna miss anything. The first tip is how you hold the football. I like to put my ring finger, first knuckle, on the second lace with my thumb in line with the stripe, which is between my index and middle finger, and my pinky kind of just sits right there. If you have smaller hands, simply move it down 1 lace. Some key points to remember with your grip. You want to leave a gap right here. That means that you're gripping the ball with your fingers, not with your palm. You don't want to palm the ball. Secondly, you want to have a light grip. You don't want to squeeze too tight. If you squeeze too tight, it's not going to come out of your hand smoothly and your passes are going to look like that. The second tip I'm going to share is your wrist. You always want to make sure you keep a flat wrist. If your wrist is back like this, you see what it does to the point of the ball? It's facing off that way. It's going to be tough for me to throw a spiral. And even if I do get a good spiral, it's going to be spinning sideways. But if you keep your wrist flat, see how it straightens it out. Throughout your whole throwing motion, keep a flat wrist. Let's move on to the third tip, which goes along with your wrist. It's your arm motion. If you have kind of a long windup, an inefficient throwing motion, it can throw you out of the right sequence of movements and cause a bad spiral. So it's important that you clean up your throwing motion and not have any wasted movement that you don't need. If no one's ever taught you the correct arm motion to have, pay attention to this. So you set up to your target, you pull the ball back to here, drive your elbow through to there, and then release. Some key points for your throwing motion. Go to here. I don't want to reach my elbow way back here behind my body because then it's going to be tough to get back in front. Try to keep your elbow slightly in front of your shoulder the whole time of your windup. Then keep the ball tight to your body right here. So when you do this, you really have to make sure you're turning your shoulders back in your windup. Not reaching, but it's your core and your big muscles turning back. So you're here. Another key emphasis for your throwing motion. You don't want to drop the ball down here below your elbow. You always want to keep it at your elbow or higher. So when you pull the ball back, look at the way it's pointed down at the ground. I'm not flipping it back like this. It's natural. I start here with the ball pointed slightly down and forward, pull back, still in that position. And then when my arm comes through, the tip is pointed right at my target. It's not off to the side. I'm not pulling here. I'm not flipping it back like that and then trying to. All right, the fourth tip is how you release the ball. And this is very important. It goes along with that second tip because it has a lot to do with how your wrist moves. So remember, you want to keep a flat wrist. That means when you go to throw, you're here. The tip is facing your target, your wrist is flat. But when you want to release the ball, you want it to roll off your fingers like this. So you want your hand to go from here to turning down like that. So your fingers should roll off one at a time until your index finger is the last finger to leave the ball, adding that spin to it.
The last thing to leave the ball is that index finger.
It's actually very simple. If you keep the ball in the same position and add spin to it, it will spiral perfectly. But if you knock it out of that position somehow by trying to flick it or it's facing the wrong way, it's not gonna spiral. It's very important that you understand this because you have to have a smooth release to achieve a spiral. This is also why it's so important to keep a light, smooth grip. You don't wanna be squeezing too tight because then it won't roll off your fingers as gracefully. Like I said, you wanna drive here and then turn your hand down. This motion from your wrist is called pronation. And every single NFL quarterback pronates their wrist as they throw the football. So if you don't do it, you should start practicing it now. Flat wrist to pronate. Throwing a spiral is very simple if you understand what you're trying to accomplish, which is keep it facing the same direction in the same position and add spin to it. The fifth and final tip that I'm gonna share that will help you throw perfect spirals consistently is being repeatable. You have to do the same thing every single time if you want to do it on a consistent basis. So you have to practice forming the right habits to throw a consistent spiral. How do you do that? Don't get out to the field and start trying to throw as far as you can immediately. Start with some short passes. Make sure you get the hang of how to throw a good spiral, what it feels like to throw a good spiral. Make sure your mechanics are on point. Your warm-up is very important because if you warm up the wrong way, you're setting yourself up to throw the ball the wrong way the whole rest of your training session or game or whatever. So let's go back over those 5 tips again, just to make sure that you guys really get it down. 1, your grip. Make sure that you have a light grip. You're gripping with your fingers. 2, your wrist. Keep a flat wrist. Keep it locked throughout your whole throwing motion. 3, your throwing motion. You don't want to reach back behind your body. You want to turn back with your big muscles. Keep it in front of your body so you're here. And 4, how you release the ball. Your wrist has to pronate and turn down so the ball rolls off your fingers one at a time. And the 5th and final tip, like I just said, is being repeatable. So you have to practice. Throwing spirals might come natural to you, it might not come natural to you. Either way, you have to be practicing the right techniques so you can do it on a consistent basis. On my channel, I cover all quarterback tips from how to throw farther, to how to throw a perfect spiral, to how to just throw a football in general. So if you haven't seen any of my other videos, please check those out because I throw a ton of tips in those that will help you be a better thrower of the football. Some drills that you can use to help you throw a better spiral include the wrist flick drill, which is simply standing like 5 to 7 yards away from whoever's catching for you, holding your arm already at this 90-degree position right here, and then just flicking the ball out. Just like the last part of the throwing motion, focusing on pronating your wrist and the ball rolling out of your hand smoothly. And the other drill, if you have nobody to throw to, you can do this on your floor, on your bed, it doesn't matter. Lay on your back and toss the ball up and just try to get it to spin perfectly towards the ceiling and come straight back down to you. These are 2 very simple drills that you can do with another person or by yourself that will allow you to practice throwing better spirals and forming these good habits. To throw a spiral consistently, you have to remove variables from the equation that don't support throwing a perfect spiral. That's things like having a cupped wrist, having a super long out of sequence windup, pronating your wrist in your windup. All these factors can lead to throwing a bad spiral, and that's why it's so important that you pay attention to the small details and build the right habits. Make sure you keep these tips that I said in mind. Don't forget about any of them, because if you do any single one of these things wrong, it could be the cause for you throwing bad spirals. So pay attention to the details. The good news is it's the middle of the spring right now. There's still the rest of spring and all of summer to prepare and get ready for the next football season. So make sure that you're practicing, staying consistent, and keeping all these key points in mind. Don't forget about the vital information that gets you throwing good spirals once you have them. If you want me to review your throwing motion, you can visit my website. The link is in the description, but it's throwdimes.com. You can submit videos of you throwing, and I'll review them and send you back a critique, just telling you kind of what you could do better, what you might be doing wrong, and how to fix some of the issues you might be having. Appreciate you guys for tapping in. Go check out my channel, check out my other videos for more quarterback tips because I'm dropping tons of information, but let's go get better, and I'll see you guys in the next one.